stories of maybe there are ancestors, or maybe there are heroes or figures in your family or team or community who weren't perfect necessarily, but they get the job done, right? Maybe they bend the rules so that they can get something done, or maybe they're very challenging to work with, but they are somebody who everybody respects because they were able to pull people together and accomplish some greater goal. Do you have a story like that? Are you part of a story like that, or aware of someone in your past or present who fills that role?
I'm sorry, say the question again, please.
We're thinking about stories in our lives. So maybe it's you had a grandpa who he had to steal something, or he had to kind of bend the rules so that he could help the rest of your family get by, or something like that. It's some sort of flawed character, but everybody kind of still looks to them as a in some sort of like positive light. Anything like that? The big story that I was thinking of as an example is and we had actually talked about this when we first started this class, is the United States. And our kind of primary myth or our story or history that we're kind of running on right now is this history that goes back to World War II. We were the good guys, and we fought against the bad guys who was Germany and the Axis powers. And we had this ally called Russia, and Russia goes on to murder many more people than the Germans ever were able to within their own country and their territories that they took over. And so those were our allies that we ended up beating the bad guys with. And so we have this kind of like, we pretend like they were good enough, they were fine, it wasn't a big deal that we did that. And so that's the story that my mind immediately went to as we think about a story of compromise, or a story that we kind of push under the rug, as it were, in our own history.
Kind of like God used people like Cyrus and Nebuchadnezzar,
Yeah.
both really bad guys, but did good things.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go and find so dug up the palaces in Assyria, and these palaces have decorations around the top of their tell their story, and so you can see how they skin people alive as they're sieging a city, and that's the people that God used to take the northern kingdom captive as a consequence for their actions. And so it's not that God thought that what they were up to was good, but that he needed somebody to come and do this thing, so that just the law could be fulfilled. That if you don't act in accordance with this law, then there's going to be curses that are brought upon you and the people. That's what happened. Any other thoughts or ideas about that before we get started? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible is full of God using, other nations to bring down even other nations and even the nation of Israel. But one thing to keep in mind about that I see, it could be different from
think it's good to, especially as citizens of the United States, the current superpower in the world, do we experience blessings because God is using this place to bring judgment on other places, and we will then subsequently face the same kinds of judgment that he brought upon Babylon or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's I think the more that I study the Bible and study these stories, it's people that come with very simple answers and simple solutions to any of this stuff. They're usually trying to sell you something, and so the answer is it's complicated, it's difficult. You have to be discerning and use everything you got to figure out what's going on in the world. Before we get into our study this week on Daniel, I just wanted a quick review. So we talked about Jeremiah and Ezekiel, these two prophets who had these visions of exile and what that would mean. And Jeremiah sent a letter to the exiles, and Ezekiel had this vision of the valley of dry bones, which are brought back to life as this spirit of renewal for the exiled people. And then we didn't talk about Isaiah, though, so I just want to briefly touch on Isaiah. So if you would turn to Isaiah chapter 39 in your Bibles. We're going to look at Isaiah and the exile. So Isaiah 39 is about King Hezekiah. He's one of the last kings of Judah. He says, "At that time, Merodach Baladan, son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he heard that he had been sick and had recovered." Right? So Hezekiah just had this miraculous recovery from his sickness when he prayed to God for relief. God provides it. So Hezekiah was pleased, and he showed them all his treasure house, the silver and gold and spices and the precious oil and his whole armory, and all that was found in his treasuries. There was nothing in his house nor in all his dominion that Hezekiah did not show them. Then Isaiah the prophet came to King Hezekiah and said to him, "What do these men say, and from where have they come to you?" Hezekiah said, "They come to me from a far country, from Babylon." And at the time, Babylon's not the world superpower. This is pre-superpower. They're just foreign dignitaries heard about this king who was sick and got well, and so he shows them around and is happy to show them everything that the house of the Lord contains and all of its armories and everything that they have. He said, "What have they seen in your house?" So Hezekiah answered, "They've seen all that's in my house. There is nothing among my treasuries that I have not shown them." Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, "Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days are coming when all that is in your house and all that your fathers have laid up in store to this day will be carried to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord. And some of your sons who will issue from you, who you will beget, will be taken away, and they'll become officials or eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon." Okay, and so just this idea that you're bringing in the foreigner and you're doing this thing, but in a way that's foolish and is not discerning about what their intentions might be, leads to this. They note, hey, there's this city kind of in the backwoods, the middle of Palestine. It's full of gold and treasures and wonders, which we've never seen before. And so at some point in the future, that's brought back up in the histories of Babylon, and so that is one of the things that leads to their downfall. But I think that verse 8 is the most telling of this whole chapter. It says, "Then Hezekiah said to Isaiah, 'The word of the Lord which you have spoken is good.' For he thought, 'For there will be peace and truth in my days.'" Right? It's this idea of like, well, at least it's not going to happen to me.
The king was clueless.
I've doomed my children. My sons will become eunuchs in the house of Babylon, but it's gonna be nice until I die, at least. Right? It's just such a terrible thing to think or to plan that well, at least it's not me. Right? Maybe my children or grandchildren will suffer someday.
We had a minister here that did just the same thing.
Is that right?
Picked up a homeless guy off the street down somewhere in South Center, felt pity for him, and he brought him to the building.
Mm-hmm.
On the way, picked up lunch for
seems like a pretty clear application to this passage at least. So and I think just reflecting on this idea in exile, it's important to see that the prophets are trying to reveal these patterns of reality to the kings and to the people, that if you are not going to honor God and not going to continue to be loyal to Him, then you're just inviting the curses of the covenant upon yourself. Later in Isaiah, he's the very next chapter, he's trying to help them digest and understand this exile that's coming to them. Let's get into Daniel now, though. So Daniel is one of these sons. We don't know if he's the son of the king, but he's the son of Judah, who gets brought into exile. It's very possible that he's one of these eunuchs as well, that he is brought into the king's inner circle, and one of the things they would do is castrate the young men in order to ensure that they wouldn't be a threat to the throne, and they would be able to keep them around to do that. We don't see that in Scripture, but it's very possible that that's why Daniel was able to rise so high within the government of Babylon and subsequently Persia. And so let's get into Daniel chapter 1. Hopefully we've heard this story before. We're not gonna read through this whole thing, but I just want us to think about it in terms of story of exile. This is Daniel goes into Babylon, and he gets a new name. So verse 6, chapter 1, verse 6 says, "Now among them from the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah." Then the commander of the officials assigned them new names. And to Daniel he assigned the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. And for whatever reason, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stick in our brains better than Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael. Yeah. Exactly. I just proved my point live to you.
Well, Travis preached on this 2 weeks ago, brother.
Okay. Yeah, and I wasn't here, so that's why I'm failing the homework here. So verse 8, but Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. Which is interesting. So the only thing that we know about this food is that it's choice food. Okay, it's in some way defiling, and so what does that mean with regard to the law for food to be defiling?
Might have blood in the meat.
Okay, so it wasn't prepared in the correct way.
May have been animals that God told his people are unclean and should not eat.
Yep, could be an unclean animal of some sort. From the New Testament, we know that meat or food that's been offered to other gods is defiling. And so, yeah, so we don't know anything about it, and I think it's interesting because the only thing that we do know about it is that it was choice food or fine food. It was exceptional food. It was food that is reserved for royalty. Okay? And so I think it's important to remember that as we're reading through these stories, the author has a choice of which words he uses and what he tries to convey to us. And so the fact that we know that it's defiling, but we know that it's like the creme de la creme, right? It's the best stuff. That's what he wanted us to know. And so we don't get to know that it's pork, or we don't get to know that it's offered to other gods. All we know is that it's defiling and it's really, really good. And so Daniel refuses it. And so normally we kind of focus on the defiling part. Why would we focus on what is the point that the author might be making that Daniel refuses to partake in the royal, the best of the best food?
In note of their faithfulness by rejecting, holding on to their Jewish customs.
understanding is choice by whom? Choice by God or choice by the king? And I think when they went in there, when they went to Babylon, they were hypersensitive to an absolutely alien and brutal culture.
Mhm.
And without knowing how these things were chosen by a brutal and cruel king, they defaulted back to what they understood from their Hebrew regulations. And so that's a training that was instilled in these young men that kicked in.
Yeah.
And a recommendation for Daniel is he went back to what he was taught. And that guided him, instead of just saying, oh, we're in a new city, let's try something new. I'll do sushi.
Yeah, and so, and yeah, and I think as we're considering what led them to this down this particular path, it is important to see that they're trying to remain faithful in the midst of this tragedy. That they're trying to do this, trying to honor God. It's not clear exactly why they decided that this one was good and this one wasn't good, but God blesses them. I think that's the important thing, is to see that even though they're just eating vegetables, they're in better shape. They're doing better than the people who are eating the king's best foods. And I don't want you to think of that as, like, I've heard of like the Daniel diet and stuff like that. Like, it's silly. Like, you need protein, you need all this stuff in order to grow. And so the point here, I think, is that God is giving them this miraculous blessing, even though they're just eating vegetables or whatever. Like, not that this is actually a preferable diet in some sort of like scientific sense. And so when we see that they're blessed, it's not just that they're heartier and have more energy or whatever than all the other people, but that they are the ones who are also wiser and more intelligent, and and God is blessing them because they are trying to honor God in the midst of their exile. For us, as we're thinking about our exiles here, what are things that we ought to focus on and abstain from in order to honor God in the midst of our culture, which is largely trying to bring us into the same compromise as these people.
Well, Daniel had to look different, and he had to, and it shows up in so many of the other accounts of him being faithful to and obedient, and it seems like for the same thing we are if we the world is attractive. They have royal food. They have, and in order to attract, in order to display Jesus, we should look different than the world. And I think that's kind of the story of Daniel. But for us too, that we shouldn't look the same as the world. We should be attractive because we look more like Jesus, I think.
Yep. What about more specifically? So I like kind of how you're translating this into us. That there ought to be things that we do that are different. What are some of those things, do you think?
I think in Psalm 1:1, it talks about, and I think this is kind of shown in Daniel, when it says, don't, we're not supposed to be walking the path of the sinner, or sitting in the seats of the mockers, or following the way of the scornful. I know I have those out of all order. But it says, but his delight is on the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates everything is about individualism and all these things, you know, instead of saying, no, you know, there's a way that seems right into a man, but the end of the destruction, to say, you know what, I'm gonna put, you know what, I hear that ideology, but let's put that aside. Let's see, what does God say about what does God say about greed? And, I mean, I know in our society today, which is good, you know, sexual sin, you know, trying to say, hey, you know, we're not trying to proliferate this type of thing to every child in America. That's great. That is great. I mean, where do we stand on greed? I mean, where do we stand on hypocrisy? You know, is it okay? You know, it's great for a person to more and more and more. Hey, that means you're successful. You know, hey, everything. And we look at like athletes, you know, people who got gold medals, you know, say, oh man, you know, this is human. What a human can do is the pinnacle of, but it's not what God can do. Is the pinnacle. You know, we're trying to focus on God, God's wisdom, you know, God, the knowledge of God, and follow Him instead of being polluted, you know, and diluted, and the Word of God just, you know, being down there, and what man thinks is up here.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to imagine that Daniel and his friends here, as they rise in the ranks in this Babylonian and of the other governments that follow, they're given power and wealth and all these things, but we don't hear about any of that kind of stuff. So I like the focus and thoughts on what we're doing with our money and how we're treating others and how we're approaching these things in the world, that our witness is going to be driven by, you know, what do I do with that money that God's given me? Is it a storehouse kind of mentality where I gotta keep it up and, you know, spend more money, maintaining my more money so I can get more money? Or is it's a temporary stop here so that I can bless the people around me? If God has blessed me with money. Any other thoughts before we move to Daniel chapter 6? Oh,
Wasn't it part of the Israel law they weren't to eat blood and fat? Was that part of the Israel law?
yeah, so the blood law that they have is that they are meant to slaughter animals in a certain way so that the blood runs out. And so part of that is just that they're to prepare it in a way that honors the life of that animal. Usually it's thought of it as opposed to killing an animal and just digging right in, or just tearing it apart and throwing it on the fire. It's a different kind of thing. And so yeah, they're not supposed to do that. And then what was your other, the fat? So the fat has to do with when you're bringing a sacrifice to God. Depending on the sacrifice, you're supposed to give the fatty portions to God. And so yeah, there is some ideas that have that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because when they're going back to the Israelites, when they made it to the promised land, they ate off the fruits and stuff. They didn't. Well, God provided them with the manna and the quail.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? But I don't remember reading where they ate their livestock or anything like that.
Yeah, they would have eaten meat less frequently than we do. It'd probably be a special thing once a week or once a month, something like that. But it is they still do that. They still eat meat as long as it's not one of the animals they're not supposed to eat.
Okay.
Pigs or lobsters or things like that. You have something?
You mentioned the Daniel diet. I
Yeah.
never heard of that. But I mean, vegetarians, there's lots of them, and they swear that they're healthy. So, and you asked what can we do, maybe fasting, that wasn't.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. Next quarter, we're going to do a whole class on Christian disciplines. I'm very excited about it. I've been reading and studying and thinking a lot about it, and I think it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be very practical application kind of class. So we're going to look at it in the Bible, but we're also going to do it. We're going to try some of these practices most important practices that we can do as Christians, especially in a culture that thinks that more is better, that bigger is better, and all these things. And so I think fasting is a helpful way for us to become aware of our appetites, become aware of this hunger and things that we have. Like hunger is seen as the enemy, right? You see signs everywhere. No one should be hungry ever. And it's like, well, is that true? Like, should we never be hungry? Should we always be satisfied and full, or is hunger an important part of our life, an important function of our bodies that helps us to know more about ourselves? I tell you, when you are hungry, it is much harder to control your anger and frustrations and emotions and all these things as they come up. And so part of me has learned through fasting is that, I don't have as much control over those things as I thought I did. I should build some of that up. And actually, I was tempering my anger by just eating more so that I'm not quite as angry instead of dealing with my anger, dealing with these issues.
I think there's a spiritual component to that too, understanding, being full on the Holy Spirit, and coming to that understanding that God uses our physical body and the physical world to teach us something about our spirituality and the spiritual realms, so to try to glean and say, okay, what is God trying to teach me spiritually about hunger? And he does, after he feeds a group of people, and then they're running on foot, and they're trying to force him to be king, and he has a lesson to teach them, about the bread of life. So I think there's always a spiritual component. And in the end, he ends up telling one of his followers that, the spirit means nothing. I mean, everything, the physical means nothing, but, to also look at these bodies as a vessel, to say, this is the vessel that I'm in to do God's work, and if I'm trying to be like Daniel, saying I want to treat my body the way that God wants me to treat my body, so that this vessel will allow me to do the work of the Lord for all the days that He's given, to discern, each and every one of these things.
Yeah, and to say that man doesn't live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God, and to never put that into practice, I think is just trust that, right? So yeah, I think all that's very good. So we're going to go through the lion's den, and so Daniel, as a habit, he's praying probably the Shema multiple times a day. He's caught doing these things, and he gets thrown in the lion's den. Very, very similar idea here, except now there's consequences to his disobedience, right? He's trying to work with the authorities to say, hey, I want to honor my God. I still want to, I'm still going to serve and work in the ways that you want me to, but I'm trying to honor my God as best I can. And then at some points, he's just not willing to compromise. He's not willing to stop praying to God. He's not willing to do these things, and that also leads to consequences. And so he's willing to follow through with that, which I think is an important lesson for us, is that our seriousness about our convictions will be a witness to the people around us. And so if you are serious about, I'm going to honor the people around me, I'm going to honor them, and I'm willing to suffer because of that, then that is a witness to people. But if when the rubber hits the road, you're compromising on your values, that is also a witness to who you are and what you actually believe. But the last thing I want to do in the last couple of minutes is to think about Daniel 7. So Daniel 7 is where Daniel gets weird. Okay, this is when the visions start coming, when it starts getting all wacky, and we start seeing all these apocalyptic visions. If we remember from our Revelation class that we had a while ago, apocalypse just means to unveil something. So when you see apocalyptic literature in the Bible, it is is just trying to show you the reality behind things. So often we just see the world as the world, and apocalypse is when it's unveiled and you actually get to see the spiritual realities behind the world. And so he has this vision of these beasts, which are coming up out of the sea, and they're destroying and consuming everything. And then verse 9, Daniel said verse 9, I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was like white snow, and the hair and his head was like pure wool, and his throne was ablaze with flames, and its wheels were burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat, and the books were open. And I kept looking because the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, its body was destroyed and given to burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. And remember, this is an apocalypse for exiles. It's an apocalypse for people that are in exile, and it's trying to show them the realities of things. That right now it looks like everything's messed up. It couldn't possibly be fixed. We're hundreds and hundreds of miles from our homeland. We're enslaved, and we're serving these great beasts that are just going and destroying the world. And so Daniel's trying to show you, no, look, the reality of things is that the Ancient of Days is sitting on his throne. He's surrounded by his servants, that there's these chatting, the little horn, the little beast is continuing his chattering, but he's going to be slain. Judgment's going to be brought, and justice will ultimately reign. And then the last portion here, it says, verse 13, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples and nations and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. So Jesus, he takes upon himself this title of the Son of Man. And when he refers to himself as the Son of Man, he often refers to this passage where he's the cloud rider. He's the one that's coming before the Ancient of Days. And he's sitting on a throne next to the one who is the Ancient of Days. And so for him, for Daniel, he's again trying to present this apocalypse to these people as hope, that this exile will not last, that these kingdoms, which are these beasts, they're not eternal, but there is one who is the Son of Man, who's this human one who's going to be elevated up and brought up to the throne sitting next to our God, and he's the one who's going to sit over this everlasting kingdom. And what's incredible about that is that's our hope as well, that we see the beastly kingdoms of this world that destroy and trample the little ones and all these things under their feet. And for us, our hope is not in any of those kings or any of those kingdoms, but in the cloud rider and the Son of Man who is elevated to this throne. Any last comments? We're a couple minutes over here. Awesome. Well, thank you for your attention today. We're going to be studying the intertestamental period next week. So we're going to look at kind of the after effects of after they go through exile. What did the Jewish people do? The Bible, the Old Testament is largely silent on this period, but we have a lot of evidence in the New Testament of the kind of stuff that they did, like put together synagogues. They have these educational systems which train up rabbis and these experts in the law. All these things are meant to ensure that the exile doesn't happen again. So, or at least that's one of their main